start by, just thanking you for coming. Really appreciate it. So please introduce yourself. I know you guys are very accomplished.
We need mics.
So, good afternoon, everyone. I am Portia Powell. I am a vice president of chemical banking. I've been in banking my entire working career, and like many of you, I've gone through those stages where it's like I'm over this. I think the key for me has been finding things in banking that allows me to put my personal interests, like motherhood, like this summit, and sharing with women who are going through some of the same struggles and some of the same successes. It's not all just struggles, but sometimes even the successes create new struggles. So sitting here, I thought I was going to come be a speaker, and I have been more of a listener. I got notes in my phone. There's a lot going on. So just to be able to connect with you women and hopefully share some insight on some of the things that I've learned, give you some insight on my life that has been very, very interesting, will hopefully resonate with some of you, and we can take some great things away.
Awesome.
Good, we got mic'd up. Hi, I'm Amanda Ritchie. I have several businesses here in Detroit. I'm sort of a multi-time entrepreneur, masochist a little bit, but I like it. We have, my husband and I have 5 children, aged 13 to 20. So it's a busy, I love your intro, and there is a lot of success, and every success brings challenges. And every challenge brings new opportunities. So we're going to be talking about money and money moves for moms, sort of what essential things that we've done, learned, observed, that can help you manage your financial life, as women are now over 50% of the workforce and killing it. So we have more money, we get to make good money decisions for ourselves and for our children.
Correct. We have more money, and we're also statistically living longer. So a lot of people follow me on Instagram, I'm big on that. People think, because she talks about money, she must really love money. It's not about loving money. It's about how do you strategically use money to work for you. And you don't need a zillion of it. It's, the little that you have, how can that little one work for you? So I'll turn it to you guys, because you guys have been talking a lot. I've been, eavesdropping in your conversation around money. So go ahead.
Yes, so our conversation is probably going to be untraditional of what has happened thus far, primarily because I think talking about money in our community is untraditional. It's just something we don't talk about. We don't talk about finances, especially as women. It's like, I think we were groomed that our financial household is so secretive and we can't talk about it. Nobody should know how much money we make and things like that. But then we are now in corporate America, and we're trying to figure out if we're doing the right things, if we're aligned, if we're saving correctly. But this is the one area we don't talk about, as women. We don't talk about it amongst ourselves. We talk about Pinterest, and we talk about shoes, and we talk about vacationing and what our kids should do for.
A lot about hair.
A lot about hair. We need money for all of that. So how are we missing the most essential part of that? And to my, what we call stay-at-home moms, in my career, I have spent a lot of my time in business banking. And like most of you, you've been slaying at home, and now you're ready to slay somewhere else. And then it's coming into the bank, and how do I get a business loan? But we don't have anything that's led up to that point. So steps that we need to take. How do we prepare ourselves? I know, hey, I'm staying home with my kids for 3 years. What happens in that 4th year when I'm ready to do something else? What should I be putting aside? How do I put it aside? Where do I put it aside? How do I budget for that? How do you budget when you're broke? That's the best way to learn how to budget. You as a broke person, how they manage some things, they got some strategy for you. So, trust me, I've been there. So I'm gonna give you guys just a little bit of backstory about me, because it'll make why I'm so passionate about money, finances, just so important. Right out of high school, I got engaged to my high school sweetheart against my own smart judgment. I thought that was a good idea. So at 20 years old, I was engaged, and 21, I was pregnant. I had all my friends in college graduating, and I'm coming to the graduation pregnant. Thankfully from that, I have a wonderful 12-year-old daughter who is right here to the left, Jada. You want to learn how to budget? Be a single mom at 21 years old. You will get some stuff figured out. And a lot of the mistakes I made have been some of the best success stories, of my life. Things that I went through and struggled early has prepared me for now. What do I do with this extra money? Being the vice president of the bank, how do I leverage that?
She just got a promotion, by the way. Yeah.
And to that point, when I was negotiating this promotion, Blessing will attest to you, we had a sidebar at her house. Okay, how do I ask for more money? What do I say?
I said, go ask for double.
I'm like, what do we do? I've never done this. But these are conversations we have to have, and we don't have them amongst ourselves. And then, unfortunately, we don't know when we've missed out. We don't know if we're being treated fairly. One of the key things we're talking about is women being treated equitably in this economy. If we're not having conversations amongst ourselves, how do we know if that's happening? How do we know what men are making if we're not asking? Those are the type of things that we have to do better. And I'm sorry, I don't want to steal it.
So I think I'll kind of go off of what you said, and sort of early on, some things I was really happy I did. My background is entrepreneurial. I worked for my father when I was young. He died when I was very young, and that left me with a business that was insolvent, bankrupt. And I met with my banker, who kind of laughed at the idea of giving me money because the company wasn't worth anything, and I had to figure out how to make payroll. And I was 27 at the time. And so I said, well, tell me what a balance sheet should look like. So financial literacy and spending time to understand what does net worth mean for you as an individual. Like, read about it. It's Google it. Say, well, let me create a budget if I've never created one, and put it together. If you've done all that, awesome. Then you get to move on to the next thing, which I started saving for a 401k for myself very early because I was making no money. I started making $17,000 a year, and I had a 4-year degree. My undergrad's mathematics and a good GPA, and was making $17,000 a year. Had no furniture in my first apartment other than a love seat, but I started with a 401k and putting the maximum in it because I'd never feel it. Like, it never came in your paycheck. I would have spent it if it did. So I was glad I did that. And then when I started having kids at age 24, I had my first child. And I started a 529 plan for him, and started, or you can do a prepaid tuition plan with the state of Michigan, in putting college education there. And then with each subsequent kid, I did the same thing with automatic deductions. My kids laugh because everything you can do automatic, I do. So they get allowance. I don't pay for pizza, I don't pay for anything. I'm like, you have allowance, that's what it's for, and if you want more than that, get a job, you're 16. And they really don't like that. I'm not very popular on that day, but it's good for them, and they appreciate it. So I would say, it's okay to make mistakes and waste money. Lord knows I've wasted a lot more money on shoes than I probably should have, but it's also important to do those really good fundamental things. And it's important with business too. So what are you setting aside for your business? What reserves do you have? I had a business really dependent on automotive in 2009 when we had the biggest recession since the Great Depression, and I was really happy I had $1 million of cash stacked away. And that allowed the business to survive another day. So I think it's really important to do things like incremental. Someone earlier said, you don't have to do it all at once, just incremental. Like, whatever you can do on an automated basis, do. And I'm a big believer in points. Like, points are awesome.
Amex points.
Amex points.
Hello. I spent a month learning about how to do all the points. Now I travel all over the world free.
Me too. I do the same thing.
Yes. So I mean, it's simple things. It doesn't even need to be a lot. It's, that gas, that water, that Costco trip. I mean, you can double up those points really fast and make the most of it later on.
My kids make fun of me because I got my son beads for Christmas one year, and he's like, I know you didn't buy it. Like, you must have paid points for these. I'm like, yeah, actually I did, because it kind of feels free. But I think it just adds up. Little things add up.
So Portia, you and I, we've talked about, the double Ds, because that's something that I think that we need to get to, because, for me, this is my second marriage, hopefully the last. And I'm always like, oh, it's never gonna happen to me. When I think my first marriage, I'm like, oh, it's never gonna happen to me. Until we landed in court, And, you know, I'm like, who gets the car? Who gets, you know, is he gonna take my 401k? What is gonna happen? And I mean, fortunately, we didn't have to go through, you know, any craziness. Everybody was just kind of like, you know what? Keep your shit. I keep my shit, and we move on.
But that's the exception. That's the exception.
So luckily for me, but a lot of us are like, oh, it's never going to happen, and it's not going to happen. But how can we prepare for it? Another thing is, you know, is what you're going to talk about it. The double D's is divorce and death, right? And we have a financial counselor. We finally went to see one because my husband is very traditional. He's like, oh, we don't need a financial counselor. I have my spreadsheet. It's okay. Like, no, like we are not thinking about what happens if one of us dies. Like, who is going to take care of our kids? Like, we are not from here. We're in Nigeria. Like, how are our kids going to get back? Like, if something happens. So it's something that a lot of people don't think about. And I just want you guys to please shed some light on that.
Being in banking, unfortunately, I have seen women primarily come in and we're just lost. A lot of times I think we play more of a passive role in our household finances. Typically the husband is the head, and that's fine, but we very much so have to be aware. We have to be active in it to at least have an understanding of what's going on. Because the two biggest areas, and not these D's, but death and divorce, is where we completely fall apart. We're just not prepared for it. We haven't thought the entire process out. A very good friend of mine who I thought was going to be here, but she couldn't make it, just very recently this year, 39 years old, her husband was killed in a car accident. They have 3 kids, you know, at home. And she's a banker. She thought she was prepared. We have a couple $100,000 in life insurance. If this happens, great. Until those numbers have to make realistic life sense. Till you have to realize that this $300,000 has to supplement your income for the rest of your life. Till you realize that you got 3 kids that at some point are going to need to go to college. To the point you realize you still have a mortgage that somehow has to get paid. To the point, who's picking these kids up from school every day now? I mean, her whole life changed. And it's just not something she was prepared for. I mean, at 39, I don't think any of us are thinking we're getting ready to die, but the reality is we don't know what's going to happen the minute we walk out of the door. How are we prepared for it? We have to start having these ugly conversations. And death is an ugly conversation. Nobody wants to talk about it. We don't want to imagine it, but the reality is that's the one thing that is for certain in life. So how do we prepare for it? How do we start having those conversations? What's our succession plan? What happens if something happens to us? Can some of you guys imagine your husband having to run the entire household? Like, this is for real. You know, that's a serious situation that we really need to start having more conversation around.
And it's something nobody wants to talk about.
It's not talked about.
It's like a taboo, but I was like, when we were putting this panel together, I said, these are things that are important to me. And it's something that we really need to start talking about. And the same thing goes for even how to manage just your financial, the household.
So, since you took the death question, I'll take the divorce one. I had an awful divorce. It was not your situation. And I will tell you, raw talk, right?
Yes, raw talk.
So, I was the sole breadwinner. My ex-husband was a musician. I mean, very cute when we met. He hired a very, very bulldog, powerful attorney, because he believed that everything I had worked for, he was entitled to. I had 3 children. I was the sole breadwinner for 17 years. And he did not work. He did not want to work, but he felt entitled because I was leaving, that somehow he was entitled to everything I'd worked for, and that I shouldn't have anything left. So I think that one thing I was happy about was that I was involved. He took care of the day-to-day bills, but I did have life insurance. I did have a 401k. I did have some of the check boxes. Like, we all know what we should be doing to be healthier, wealthier, happier. Just do the checklist and get your retirement savings started if you don't have it. And those things really helped because I was able to rebuild even after paying his attorney $100,000. His attorney, not even my attorney. And we as women, when we're going through a divorce, we're going to be thinking about our kids, right? So I was a successful business person. I'd done well financially, but I just was willing to write a check. Like, I'm going to write a check for whatever it takes to make my kids okay, because that's what we care about. He did not care about that, and at all. And so it was a bad situation, but I had the reserves and a good support system to help through that. And because I checked those boxes, it was something to fall back on. Still cost me a stupid amount of money, but I think that had I not had a good financial plan in place, it would have been harder.
So sorry, go ahead.
And her story is fantastic, but most of us, I wasn't in that position. You know, it's like, oh, who's paying this mortgage payment? You know, what happens now? You know, so unfortunately, I don't think any of us, we're all going to be married forever. Our husbands love us. This is a lifetime thing, right? Right?
Yeah.
That's the dream. That's the hope that that's what happens. But unfortunately, in reality, it's not always the case. And no, we shouldn't be living in a marriage preparing for the divorce, but we just have to make sure that we're aligning ourselves that we're going to be okay, regardless of what the circumstances that, take place. And one key to that is investing. So many women, we don't invest in ourselves or in finances. For me, I have a 529 plan for my daughter. My mother actually set it up for her. I think she was 3 months old. So I got systematic with saving, and I didn't have a lot of money, so I couldn't put a lot into it. And just this year, I looked at it and I said, this isn't gonna pay for her to go to college. What else can I do? So my daughter, we took that money and we went to the Wayne County auction. She had $9,750 saved in this 529 plan that I somehow thought was gonna pay for her to go to college in 6 years.
And she's 12 already.
And she's 12.
We know you and how much it costs.
So we just bought her first rental property, and she helps me, and we've been painting and getting all of this stuff, and now that rental money will go towards this college plan. And fortunately, it's in a good neighborhood. Hopefully in 6 years we can sell that and use that to fund a big portion of college. But we have to start thinking outside of the box. We have to start thinking about other sources that are not necessarily the traditional way of doing things, because we don't live in a traditional world anymore. If we did, none of us would be sitting in this room, because this is very untraditional of anything that has happened historically.
And how do you like the Michigan Pre-K tuition program? For a 4-year institution, if you have some money to set aside when your kids are younger, it's an alternate to the 529 plan. If you haven't heard about it, look into it.
Absolutely, and there's some tax benefits. We all know the new laws have probably hurt us more than helped us. So there's some tax benefits to these prepaid savings plans, and it's definitely worth taking a look at. I try to contribute to both, but it just seems like it's never enough. And with college costs rising, it's just like, what do we do to prepare for it?
And that's it. Those are all great points. So for me, I want to open it up to the audience because I see a lot of people trying to get some. So I see a hand in the back. Do we have a mic? I know we're short on mic. So there's somebody back there. Can you raise your hand?
We can hear one.
So my question is more about, and just a little bit of background. I've recently relocated to Detroit this year. I got a promotion at work that nearly doubled my salary. Thank you. But to your point, Portia, I think you mentioned toward the beginning, we don't have conversations about, if we come into a windfall of money or more money than we normally make, what would be your suggestions on first things to think about in terms of savings? I have a 5-year-old. For his 5th birthday, we opened an LLC for him. But as far as like what that looks like with extra money that I'm making now, how to invest that, how to put that to work for him at such a young age so that it'll be worth something when he really needs it.
That's fantastic, and congratulations, and welcome back to Detroit. We're happy to have you back home, and this is home for you. If not, we're happy to have you. I think for me, what has helped me is having a plan. And I can't even realize I'm about to make this openly, but I suck at budgeting. I do. It's very hard for me to say, hey, I want that, and I can't have it because it's not in my budget. It's something I'm constantly working on. I have a financial mentor.
I knew there was a reason I love you. I have never budgeted anything in my life. I have no clue what's going on when it comes to like, I don't know what's happening. Like,
Mints.
I mean, it's,
yeah.
and I can teach budgeting all day. You guys want to hear lessons? I can teach them. Can I follow them? There is a little bit different. So what I've tried to do, especially as I've gotten promotions, is determine how much I need to live off of. Like, what do I need? What do I have to spend? And anything above that amount, I call it paying myself first, or now paying Jada first. Unfortunately, she gets paid more often than I do. But it's putting money aside in places that I can't touch, realistically. Because sometimes if you can see it, we can find a way to spend it. If it's there, we have access to it, we can find something, to do with that money. Or there's things that come about that we didn't plan for. This year she decided she wants to study abroad, and that's gonna cost me a nice chunk of money that I'm glad I had saved, and we can now supplement that. So finding some alternative saving sources. Investing, real estate has become a fortunate hobby of mine, so I do a lot of real estate investing. You started the LLC for him, that's fantastic. So continue, down those paths, look for other savings alternatives. Talk to a financial coach, because they can—
Come to the book club, November 1st, we have a financial architect.
Because when you talk to that financial coach, they will align it specifically to what your needs are and based off your financial situation. So finding a financial coach, I have 3 different mentors, one's financial, one's career, and one's just life, because Lord knows that's a whole other topic. But make sure you just reach out to people who are the expert in it. We're not the expert in everything.
There's a couple of resources. One, I mean, it seems basic to me, but I have a sister who's done well, who we chat about money, because she's sort of, she is very fashionable, and she is never ever going to follow a budget. She's very smart, she's good at making money, but man, she looks good. And it's like, blows her budget. So max out your 401k, max out your IRA for you first. There's 2 resources I like. I like Fool.com. The Motley Fool has some really good basic financial literacy and checklists and resources for automated investments. I need things to be automatic. So if I get a promotion, I'm taking that extra money and I never want to see it because it'll go away. So I want to automate those investments as much as possible. There's some good resources on there. The other one I like is Mint, which is a really nice tool. And American Express has tools for like notifying you when you've gone over budget, which is helpful. Anything I can automate. I've had different experiences with financial planners, some good, some bad. They're making commission somewhere, so my advice to you when working with a financial planner is to say, how do you make money? Now, tell me more about that, and how am I paying you? Because they're all making money somehow, and they have nice offices for a reason. They're paying for them out of commissions from something they're doing for you. And as long as it's transparent, that's great. But sometimes it's not.
And there's 2 different things. Financial planners, like you said, and I've been one of those for a period of time, so I do understand how commission works. But a financial coach is a little bit different, and I just recently learned that. And that's really just somebody who's giving you advice and coaching you through your own financial journey, wherever that is. So they're not necessarily even selling you any products, they're just making recommendations, pointing you into tools like what she mentioned. This is something that's really good for you to use. This is something that helped me budget. This is the app that I downloaded for my phone. So they're really just coaching you, or they may coach you to a financial planner, but they're really just coaching you on tips and tools that you can use during your financial journey, wherever that is.
We have room for more questions.
As far as investments, I know that you said manufactured for 401k. That's good. But as far as outside investments, like any stocks or anything along that, I know they say I don't do bonds, try to do stocks, maybe
No.
long term.
Yeah, I think stocks and bonds, people generally agree you mix your investment based on your risk tolerance. I'm an entrepreneur, I've got a crazy high risk tolerance. Somebody else might have a lower risk tolerance. My mom does more bonds than stocks. She's older and she wants a more predictable income stream that's less volatile.
When you start to invest on that level, and I'm not licensed to say so this is just a very general conversation.
Yeah.
there's strategies that's associated with, whether it's, hey, this is for long term, this is a 20-year plan, this is a 10-year plan, I need this for 6 years when my daughter goes to college, and there's different tools along those strategies that will invest in certain things based, kind of based on your timeline. But something that's very, very new, and I just recently started doing this, aside from being a banker, I'm also an entrepreneur, real estate, I do have a real estate company, but also investing in businesses. There are venture capitalists, there's a lot of different ways that you can put that money back to use that also will make you feel like fulfilled and purposeful, and things like that. There's some things I think that's going to be coming down the line that a lot of people, especially women, will find a need to connect to, and there's ways to make some of those investments work for you as well. I know somebody was just talking about capital and asking for capital. There's a lot of different resources where you can be the lender, into some of those and earn money doing some of those things. So there's a lot of different ways. Again, like I said, we're living in very untraditional times. So I think having a good mix of things, blending it, is a really good way to generate some revenue as well.
We have a question in the back.
Well, first, I would like to connect with you about that investing in businesses because my 10-year-old daughter has her own business. And I would love to speak about investing. But my question is, how do you all feel about putting your children on your credit cards to build their credit? Because she's 10 and I'm ready to do that for her now, just so when she gets a certain age, when she goes to college, she's established that credit.
I did that with my kids, not that young. I started them at 14 with 4 out of the 5, because one's 13. I know you're with Chemical Bank, but I will tell you, I did Chase Bank because I could connect and see their accounts. And then when my daughter says her brother owes her money, I can be like, oh, I can take care of that. But I'm sure Chemical has something similar. And then I did, I'm not an American Express ad, but I did American Express cards for my kids when they hit those teenage years for exactly the reason you're saying. And so we could start to have some of those conversations, and they could begin to own it and make mistakes, because they're gonna make mistakes with money. And some of my kids are better at managing their money than others, and they learn from each other. It's good.
I think one of the worst mistakes we can make is to start educating our kids on finances and money at the point they're 18 years old. I mean, we have to have more conversations, at younger ages, because if we're teaching somebody about credit when they already have credit, we're working from behind. That's the one thing that's going to affect us pretty much for the rest of our lives. It's one of the most important aspects, of our financial life. And if we're not finding out about it until we're adults, we're putting ourselves and we're putting our kids, in harm's way. Some credit card companies have restrictions. I think American Express, you can't add your child until they're 13. I just checked it out. Is it older?
Yeah, American Express is older, but you can do like a high school account and those sorts of things. And you could put a limit. I mean, be reasonable, like put a limit on what they can charge. I've got one in college, and pizza delivery, I didn't know you could get so often. But
and there's great benefits in doing that too. What I've unfortunately also seen is sometimes we don't think of the negative consequences of doing that as well. I just had a young man who came in, he's 19, and his mother had him as an authorized user on her credit cards, and then she started experiencing some financial difficulty and had to file bankruptcy. Even though he didn't file, because that shows up on his credit report, it now shows up that bankruptcy on his credit report. It had absolutely nothing to do with him. So we have to just be conscious too of how sometimes those things, I don't think anybody plans on having to file for bankruptcy. It's not one of those situations we plan for, but just be conscious when we're going through those things. If we've added our child, they're affected positively, but they're also affected negatively. If this card all of a sudden is maxed out, this child now has a maxed out credit, card reporting on their credit report. And I don't know if we always realize that that's the case as an authorized user, but it is. So as much as those things are positive, we want to make sure we're not impacting our kids in a negative way, as well. So maybe add them on a card that we don't really use that much. You know what I mean? The one that's just kind of separate from what we, access. Or maybe opening a new card just specifically to have for, for our kids or something along those lines too.
And you can do IRAs for kids pretty young, so, you know, you ask the question, what can you do for your son who's 5? You know, I did IRAs for my kids very young, and because if you have your own business or your own LLC, they can have earned income up to a certain amount that's not taxable, and you can dump it all into an IRA where there's money tax deferred, or, you know, those sorts of things are really helpful. But it takes time to learn them all. So you start with the simple ones, make sure you've got those checked, then read some more, talk to some other people that have been through it, and do some new things. And there's always new things to do.
So thank you guys so much. You guys have, so something just popped up because I noticed, you know, you've started multiple businesses, same with you. So what can women start doing right now to kind of diversify their portfolio? How do they learn more about making money? What can they do right now to invest in themselves? You know, is it taking a class? Is it, you know, networking?
I think it's coming here.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, to be honest, I think this is a really good forum. I think that talking with other smart women that are doing cool things, there are probably women in your workplace, in your kids' kindergarten class, that are doing really cool things, and if you just chat, you can learn a lot.
There's about 3 years ago, maybe 2 years ago, I sat on a panel for something totally different, and it was work related, and I sat on a panel, and I connected with someone, April Boyle. Is she still here?
Yeah, April's here. She should be. She's speaking soon.
I just started coming back, but nevertheless, April and I met, we were on the panel together, and 3 years of conversation, she introduced me to Blessing. She said, Portia, I just met this organization I'm working with. There she is. Hi, April. But those are the type of things that we need to keep us plugged in. I had no idea, I had never heard of Mother, honestly, and when she introduced me to Blessing, I went to Blessing's house, we had brunch, and I have been like, how can I do more? What else can I do? Can I, you know, but conversation is really where it starts. And when we can connect ourselves to like-minded, you know, women that are on the same path, or at least have some of the same interests, because we're all at different financial levels, we're all at different life levels. I feel like I am a brand new mom, and my daughter's 12, but teenage years is something totally different. That's a whole new level of motherhood. I need any advice I can get on that, because this is brand new for me. But we have to connect ourselves with people that are on the same journey, or people that at least have the same interests, because that's how we grow. And we should talk to people at all different levels. It shouldn't be only those that are below us or those that are beneath us. We need a good mix of people, because that's where you get the best ideas. That's where innovation happens. That's where new ideas come from, is the mix, the diversity in life and culture. Like, we have to surround ourselves with all different types of women, because that's when we are at our best.
I think that's it. Do we have room for one more question, or should we close it? One more
Wait,
question.
go to one more question, and I'm just gonna, we'll skip the break and go right to
Okay, one more question.
So, staying positive, but, so I am primary breadwinner for a long time now. It wasn't planned. It's just happened that way. So I have a little more to lose, and I have 2 sons that are my world, and both of them have divorced, and I hope to not be, but I'm going through a tough time. So my question is to both of you is, if looking back, if there was one thing you could have done for yourself to protect yourself going into your divorce, what would that be?
So I think our situations are totally different, because I was 21, we were both broke, you know, it was nothing to divvy up. Neither of us really had anything. So it was a different time in our life. And fortunately, me and Jada's here, but we and her have a great relationship. Now he matured a little later, in life, but that's okay. I think just being educated, you know what I mean, and seeking out resources. I think so often we try to go through things alone, or we don't want people to know what's going on. Like, it's a secret. Everything is just so secretive. And the biggest mistakes that I made is trying to deal with the troubles of what I was going through by myself. You know what I mean? Because there are people who've gone through it, who can kind of talk you through it, or at least give you some advice. And sometimes that's not the people in our family. Sometimes it's not the people that's closest to us. Sometimes a stranger can give you the best advice, because this person is unattached. They're unbiased. They don't know your husband. They don't know you. But what they can give you is the unfiltered, the raw advice that may help you, get through that journey. I think there's clubs and forums and just different things that, you can talk to. Google is sometimes our best friend, but not being afraid to say, hey, I'm struggling and this is a bad time for me. Let me seek out some guidance from somebody else.
I think you're right on point. Two things that I was really glad I did was I agree with you though. I did too much on my own. I should have had more help. And I did marriage counseling, which I was glad I did. I think that was a good thing that did help me protect myself because I knew that this wasn't going to work, and I gave it my best shot. And then I talked with the divorce attorney early, and that was something I would recommend. Even if you don't get divorced, at least knowing your options is useful. And then I think if I have reached out to people, I would realize I was terrified of losing my children because my ex filed for full custody with no visitation. It was very difficult because he wanted the money, frankly. And so if I had talked to other women, I would understand that unless I'm doing crack in front of my kids, there's no way I'm losing my kids, right? But instead, I spent 3 days compiling emails to document everything I did for them. So get a community.
Yeah.
Definitely reach out to people that have been through this and hear the good stories, like the good stories of how it should be done. And then what are my options if it doesn't go the way we all wish it would? Because there's no reason for it to go the way it went with mine other than you don't control the other person involved. So knowing your options and getting a community more than we both did, it's really good advice.
I think educate yourself, and I want to say don't go on Google. I love Google for every other thing, but I think when you're going through the thick of things, you're kind of looking at worst case scenario, and Google will spit out everything for you and how, tomorrow your kids are going to be drug addicts because you're divorced. I mean, there's all...
I kind of agree.
I'm serious.
I use Google to find resources.
To find resources. It's like literally, be careful when you're in that space. This was me. I was texting. So what's gonna happen to my daughter now? Is she going to, be sad for the rest of her life? And here's one thing: no matter what you do, my advice will be to put yourself first. Because I stayed very attached to that marriage because I really do love that person. I really do want my child to be in a whole home. And, I really wanted that for her. And I stayed attached to that, knowing that this is not where I want to be, but I want to be in it for my daughter, and that's the other way around. You know what I mean? You need to put yourself first because it's when you are happy, that's when your kids are happy. So that was what I did, and immediately I flipped that switch. Everything just kind of fell into place. And my daughter is here, and our dad is still my best friend. He calls me, he texts me, I send him pictures of Camille. Once you make that switch, then you make the right decision for you, and that person will also see that you're putting yourself first. You know what I mean? It really changes the perspective for everybody. All right, thank you so much.